All right, everybody. So today we are going to begin learning how to do the value scale and turning two-dimensional shapes into the three-dimensional form with illusion and with value. So for this, you're going to need at least two different things. So for our activity today, you're definitely going to need an HB pencil. All this means, so pencils have different codes on them. Um, all the fancy drawing kits will say like 2B, 4B, HB, or like 4H. This is just telling you what kind of lead is in your pencil and what kind of mark it's going to give. So anything with an H in it is going to be a much harder leaded pencil and it's going to give you a much lighter mark. And anything with a B in it is going to be a softer leaded pencil and it's going to give you a really dark mark. So an HB is right in the middle of the road. That's like your normal number 2 pencil. So we're going to be using a normal number 2 pencil, or if you have an HB, and we are going to be using an ebony pencil. This is in the B section of your drawing pencils, and it's a much softer leaded pencil, and it's going to give you a much darker shade. All right, so what we are going to do is we are first going to start shading. So when you start to shade, you're going to hold the pencil at the end. That way you have more control over your pencil pressure as well as you're not going to indent the paper. We are also going to use the side of the pencil, not the point, when shading. What this is going to do is it's going to give you more surface area. And again, you're not going to create a little indent in your paper. I know that probably most of you have drawn something before, made a mistake, and you go to fill it back in, and that pesky little like crevice won't fill in. That's because you created a little dip in your paper, a little valley, and your pencil can't get in there. So again, we're going to use the side. So on our worksheet, I know it says it's going from dark to light. We're going to start light and progressively get smaller. So again, I'm going to hold my pencil at the end. This allows me to put less pressure on the paper. So I'm just barely going to put any pressure on this pencil because this should be my lightest value. And I'm trying to stay in the box. Not go crazy with it. Again, this is supposed to be the lightest shade. Great. All right, next we're going to move to the next box. And we're going to start to put a little bit more pressure on our pencil. Each box should gradually get a little darker from the last one. Okay, great. So now I'm starting to put a little bit more pressure on here. And you can always go back and add a little bit more. So I'm not loving how like drastic this is, so I might just go back and just add a little bit more pencil. Okay, great. So we're going to keep going, and I'm actually going to start to scooch my hand a little bit closer. Again, I'm going to lock my hand almost like there's a brace or a cast on here. I'm not going to do a whole lot of this with my wrist. I'm locking it in place and having my arm do the shading. And your paper might pick up some of the stuff underneath. So my desk is like, you know, has lots of paint on it, so I wanted a nice smooth surface. It's really not helping, but you might pick up some whatever's on the table beneath. So I just scooched it over a little, and that kind of has helped. All right, so I'm going to start to push really hard with this. And this might actually not be hard enough for me to get that nice transition that I want. So I might even switch over to my ebony pencil. It's okay if you get it outside the lines a little bit. Just don't go crazy. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to my ebony pencil, which should be giving me a really nice dark mark. Oh, that looks great. So again, softest leaded pencil, and it's going to give me the darkest mark. Beautiful. Look how nice that is. Awesome. All right. So you should have like a nice transition. It really should be nice and gradual. Okay, next we are going to turn our shapes into form. So how we're going to do that is through value. So the first thing we need to talk about is a light source. So hopefully in the last presentation you kind of know what a light source is. If you don't, a light source is anything that gives off light. It could be a light bulb, it could be the sun, it could be fire, a glow stick, a computer screen, a cell phone screen, anything that gives off light except for the moon. The moon is not a light source because it reflects light. It does not give off light. Okay. All right, so the closer your object is to the light source, the brighter it's going to be. So if our light source, for example, we'll put the light source over here. Here's a little sunshine, sunshine, shine, shine, sunshine. Okay, the closer it is to the object, the lighter it's going to be. So it's going to be lightest on my circle here that we're going to turn into a ball here, and then as it gets farther away, it's going to get darker. So one thing I want to talk about before we begin, we're going to talk about directional shading. So normally when you shade something, we shade things back and forth, straight. However, when you do that with things that are round, so like a sphere or even a cone, if we just go back and forth, it's going to continue to flatten it because it's going across straight, like stripes. Instead of shading back and forth, we want to shade in a kind of U shape, and that's going to help create that illusion that this is round. All right, so I'm actually going to begin with my normal number 2 pencil, my HB pencil, and then we'll add dark in later. So like I said, we're going to start at the back, again holding it towards the end, keeping my wrist locked, and I'm going to start to shade in the shape of a U or like a crescent. And as I get up towards the top, sometimes there's even a highlight, a reflection, where it's the brightest. So I'm going to kind of circle, kind of rotate around that, and continuing with that circle feel. So you really want to fill in the gaps. You don't want to be shading like this, where there's like a lot of white paper showing in between. You really want to cover it nicely. Taking my time. It's not something that should be rushed. And as I go down towards the back here, I'm going to start to put a little bit more pressure on my pencil. Yeah, switch my paper over. Where's the border of that? Okay. So still shading in that U shape. You want it to be nice and gradual. Unfortunately, I'm not loving that it's picking up a little texture underneath, but that's alright, I guess. That's looking good, but we're not done yet. I want to add more value. So I'm going to switch to my ebony pencil. I'm really going to get it nice and dark in there. Still creating that U shape. As you can see, I left a little blip right here. This is called a reflected light. That's when your light is bouncing off a really bright surface. You get this little kind of tiny reflected light. So I'm not going to make it super dark at the back there. I'm just going to start bringing it on up. We want it to be gradual. It shouldn't go from like super dark to super light really fast. I don't want to go too far up with this, so I might switch back and start to add more in there. Again, it's okay if you go out a little bit. You can always clean it up with like a eraser at the end. But again, still shading with the side of that pencil. Alright, so kind of like that. Grab my eraser really quick just because I'm not loving how sloppy I got. There. Craftsmanship is so important. Okay, awesome. So again, you can do that. Sometimes you can use a tortillon. I don't prefer to use these anymore because it makes things blurry. However, sometimes you need it to make things foggy. This is just rolled paper. I'm not going to have you guys use it today, but if in the future you need to use it, you need to use the side again. When you use the point, it gets, and I don't have one with me because I use mine properly, but my students all the time will use the point and then it gets shoved up in here. So if you do go to use this, this is just simply to smooth out and kind of soften your pencil lines. I used to be very adamant about using these a lot, but actually I think it's more important to like just go back in there and really use the pencil and take your time to do it. However, some people aren't not the greatest when it comes to shading, so that's more of a tool for people that are struggling to get their pencils to blend nicely. Okay, so again, I'm just using the side, still kind of using that directional shading. All right, so you really just want to make sure this is nice and smooth. Do not use the finger. I know a lot of people love doing that. The problem with using your finger is that you have oils in your finger and sometimes it will stain the paper and you get this weird like smudge that no longer blends. Please don't use your finger. Please, for the love of God, don't do it. All right, great. Now we're going to put a shadow underneath. So again, it's the darkest underneath. So I'm going to use the ebony pencil first. I'm going to kind of start to drag it on out, and as I go out, I'm going to start to take my finger, take some pressure off of that. All right, I'm going to switch over to my HB, which is slowly start to blend out. I'm kind of doing this kind of circular scrubbing value motion right now. Look how lovely that looks. All right, beautiful. Okay, next we are going to do the cone. So same thing, if our light source is here, it's going to be the brightest towards the edge. So on the edge of the cone, we're going to do like a straight shading, but when we get to this curved part, kind of like the sphere, we're going to curve it and do that directional shading. right? So I'm going to start off with my HB super light. We're going to start off with that up and down motion because this is kind of flat. As it gets back towards this edge, I'm going to start to push a little bit more with my pencil. Again, you want this to flow nicely, so I want to make sure that those pencil lines start to blend. Go slow. And as we get down here, we're going to start to curve it. Try to stay in the lines as best you can. We can always edit it. I know I got a little outside line. Start to kind of do this like J kind of motion. I might even turn it around and start to curve it the opposite way as I get closer over here. As it goes back, it's going to get darker and darker. Doing that J shape, creating that illusion that this is somewhat round. Then we're going to come on in with that big old bad boy of an ebony pencil and layer it on top. Going to leave a little bit of that lip for that reflected light. Still using the side of my pencil. Nice and slow. And finish it off with HB. Great. Okay, so same thing with the cone shadow. We're going to start off with the dark shadow right behind it. As it goes out, I'm going to start to lift up my pencil. Then I get slowly, gets lighter and lighter. I'm going to switch. Have those two overlap. Okay, clean up any edges. Looks great. Okay. All right, last but not least, our cube. So if our sphere, or if our light source was here, it's going to be the brightest here, maybe second brightest here, and then darkest here. So this is not round. We want to do straight shading. So I'm going to be very light with my shading up and down because I want to continue to make this feel like it has flat edges. You always want to try to go in the same direction with your shading. You don't want to, switch and then go this way and then this way. And if you do, then you want to make sure it blends nicely. Okay, so it's going to slowly get darker back here. Not crazy dark, but a little bit. Okay. Up top, it's going to be darker towards the back. Now it depends on where the light is. Now if the light was more up here, it might be, brighter on top. Awesome. And then the back one, because light cannot bounce around a corner, I'm just going to use straight up with that ebony pencil. And again, like I said, you don't want it to go in different directions, but if you do, just make sure it's subtle and that you can't see it. It blends nicely. Awesome. Okay, so for the cube, it's going to be the darkest right behind the box. And it's going to start to lighten up as it gets further away. And around the side, oops, it's going to be a little lighter. So we're still going to have that shadow, but it's not going to be as deep of a shadow as when it hits right behind that box. Okay, great. All right, the very last thing we're going to do is I want to see your blending and see that you guys can slowly and nicely transition from dark to light or light to dark. It doesn't matter which way you go. Like I said, I prefer to go from light to dark, but it doesn't really matter. So for the sake of this, we'll just go from dark to light. So again, holding it towards the end. Try your best to stay in the lines. And you might have to go back and forth over this a few times. Sometimes it's not a clear one shot, got it done right the first time. So as I get towards the middle, I'm really going to start to lighten up. You want to keep your pencil consistent so that you can kind of see like there's some areas where it's a little darker in some areas. I want to go back in and really make sure that it's nice and consistent. And we'll start to add in some of that other pencil. You never want to start on the side. Always start to integrate it on top of what you already had so that you do have that nice smooth transition. So you really want it just to slowly, slowly, slowly just fade away. Like I said, it's never a one-shot kind of deal. I'm going to go back over and start to slowly get things back in there. Okay, so that's what it should kind of look like, all right? When you're done, please take a picture of your project, of your worksheet, and I want you to slowly, take a picture of your project, and I want you to submit it so I can give you a grade on how you did. All right, guys, have a great day.